Let's bring in on video chat now from 3downnation.com, the CFL's number one insider, Justin Dunk. I like to call him Canada's Adam Schefter. How you doing, JD?
Staying safe out here, guys. What about you out there?
Yeah, we're good. We're good, but we don't have the population that you guys do in Southern Ontario, and maybe we can come around to that. But, Justin, we haven't had, it feels like, any sort of real CFL update in quite some time. I'm talking about, like, last week at least, and we haven't heard from the commissioner for longer. What do you have for us today?
There's been nothing concrete, obviously, from Randy Ambrosie, and from what I'm told, he's largely been silent because the CBA negotiations are ongoing. The latest with respect to those, there are a lot of people that feel like the CFL are taking their old school tactics like they do at CBA time all the time and cram an agreement down the players' throats at the last minute. That is how the players' side is feeling right now. So I feel like we're not going to hear from Ambrosie until if and when there's a final decision made on a possible season in 2020, because he doesn't want to say anything publicly that could be used against him potentially in the labor negotiations. But the players are sick and tired of this, and I believe that this is the one instance in the last little while that the players actually have leverage in these negotiations. Because if you have the stars of the league, and you guys were talking about this earlier, Andrew Harris, let's say, and all the quarterbacks in the All-Stars, Willie Jefferson, if they don't show up, there is no CFL.
Well, scary thought, isn't it? I mean, we are hearing from the players on social media, Vernon Adams Jr., James Wilder Jr., there's a litany of them, Tony Washington. Do they speak for the majority, or they just speak for themselves? Should we read anything into that? Do they speak for a lot bigger group of players that don't like this proposal?
I think they are not necessarily speaking for every single player, but I do believe it is the majority, because all of the players I've talked to, agents and, even the guys on the personnel side feel like, how can the players play for this kind of money? That I really get the sense that is the majority. And yes, some guys are choosing maybe not to voice it publicly, but players are frustrated because they're looking at the proposal going, all right, I'm going to go play 6 games for 33% of my salary in a hub city model where I'm going to be there for either 15 weeks or up to 105 days. And the CFL is not going to match their pension in 2020. At least that's the proposal. So, what are we really doing here? And even though there have been guys that have come out like James Wilder Jr. and say, hey, I'm moving on at least for 2020 and going to start my career after football, there are a number of players who have done that just haven't voiced it publicly. So they're going to be weighing that decision of 33% of my salary in a hub city model, leaving my family, and putting that against the potential of keeping some of the side jobs or even main jobs that they have right now.
Mark it down. It's July 15th, and we have no idea if the CFL is going to play this year. And I'm kind of swinging back and forth. I mean, the CFL and teams are wooing sponsors that there will be games. And what I'm hearing from you, and I believe it, and the players too, is that there is no appetite from them to accept this deal, which tells me there won't be games. And all that tells me is we don't know which way this is going to land. Is there any point even talking about hub cities right now if there was no return to play?
Well, I do think there is a point, but what needs to be actually figured out here, and we're never, I don't think, going to know for sure, is whether the CFL really wants to play. Do the owners want to get on the field? Because it's clear the players do. And I think the way that we'll find that out from the league office is if there is actually a legitimate offer presented to the players. That's the one and only way we're going to find out. There are some people that I've talked to that feel like the CFL is just trying to continue to kick this ball down the road, and you guys were talking about this earlier, and trying to just keep the CFL among the conversation. Yeah, we looked at hub cities. Yeah, we had discussions with the Players Association. We wanted to play, but the players didn't accept the deal. The issue here is going to be the PR blame. The league doesn't want it, but there is no way that the players are going to be blamed for not playing, especially when you look at the proposal right now that is, again, trying to be crammed down their mouth.
And like you say, that becomes a PR football, and it may come down to whether they get federal aid, whether they play or if they don't, as to how Ottawa and how the MPs across the country look at the Canadian Football League. But what you're telling me, Justin, which I should have known, It all comes down to money, doesn't it always? And there really isn't any right now for the Canadian Football League. That, to me, is the bottom line. Have I read it correctly?
It is, Roddy. And actually, I did some digging before I was coming on the show. I hope to have something more concrete, but I reached out to the Prime Minister's office and was actually put on to another department there. And they said, they will look at funding. I'm actually going to read from the statement that I got. Our government will work with all Canadian organizations to adapt to the new realities of COVID-19. With respect to the CFL, officials continue to examine their requests to see where they may be to fit in terms of existing emergency assistance programs. So to me, I take that as they're trying to still get them in those programs and not looking at giving them the lump sum of $42.5 million that the CFL has asked for. The government of Canada is open to a hub city model. I'll just add this real quick, but the CFL must have rigorous return to play health and safety protocols in place and would need to consult with provincial and local authorities to obtain due health. That's from Ryan Nearing, who was a press secretary for the Office of the Minister of Small Business. So I tried to get the concrete goods for you guys, and that's literally the latest from the Canadian government. So if you read between the lines in terms of the financials, it doesn't seem like they're going to give out a big payout because they're still focused on trying to get the CFL and hopefully the players into some of the government wage subsidy programs that are open.
This all follows in line with what I'm hearing, Justin, and that is the federal government wants the CFL to play in 2020. They want it. As a matter of fact, it was laid out to me. The government wants Canadians working, and they'll subsidize their wages if they have to, but they want them working. So, man, I'm getting a headache out of this. So it all comes back to the players needing to accept the deal from the owners. What if they don't? What if they don't? What then?
Well, I would say needing to, Roddy, the agreement needs to be fair to the players. And if the agreement isn't fair, it's not on the players to accept it. So there needs to be some give and take here. And the dirty tactics that the CFL are taking right now is tying the COVID-19 pandemic to trying to extend the deal. That's one of the key factors that we had on 3 Down Nation in terms of getting on the field in 2020 that the CFL has said, yes, we'll agree and work towards agreeing, I should say, to getting on the field in 2020, but it's going to be tied to the CBA in 2021 and further years. Why not just focus? Because it's going to take so much already to get on the field in 2020. Just focus on that aspect and worry about the rest in the future.
You remind me of Darren Dreger, who was on in this space yesterday. In that, I said, wouldn't you like to just report on hockey? Wouldn't you just like to report on football, Justin? And I'm sure your answer would be the same as Dreg's. He's like, I can't. This is the news at hand right now. Like, is there any actual football news that we could talk about today?
Right, man, I wish there was. To be quite honest, I'll give you one thing that we're working on here at 3 Down Nation, and that is that I've acquired multiple negotiation lists. So we're thinking about doing some sort of, let's say, project that's never been done in terms of the CFL neg list being revealed. There's a number of interesting names worked on there. We've had a few of them on the site. Colin Kaepernick is top of mind right now, so we have that information and some other things. So that's the only sort of real football stuff that I've been working on, because other than, a few small signings here and there, everyone's sitting around, and that's guys in front offices waiting to hear what's going to happen.
How about the BC Lions putting Chase Claypool on their negotiation list? I'm actually shocked that he wasn't before the Pittsburgh Steelers, the prospect. That's big news.
It is, certainly. And I should have mentioned that, too, because we had that and reported that news on the site on 3 Down Nation. And obviously, it's a long shot. But what it does, and for people that don't know, the negotiation list that each CFL team has, there's 45 names there. So if you put a player on there, and in Claypool's case, he's gone through the CFL draft and wasn't picked because he was taken so high by the Steelers in the second round, that it gives you the exclusive CFL rights to that player. For example, Nathan Shepard is on the Hamilton Tiger Cats negotiation list. So if it was ever even needed and Claypool wanted to come back and play in the Canadian Football League, I mean, hopefully he doesn't. We all want to see him be a star with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you guys saw recently as well, his Madden rating came out, which was pretty solid for a rookie, that the Lions would have his rights if he ever did want to come back and potentially play for his hometown team.
Cool. Oh, now the comments are coming in from the viewers. Oh, by the way, Richie Leone says, thanks for the insight. That would make too much sense. Richie's watching this morning. And I really appreciate you, Justin, coming on to straighten all this stuff out from what you know. Nelson Hakowicz, our VP of Sim Events, writes in and says, how about the BC Lions still trying to find a buyer? Oh, now's a great time to be saying, want to buy a football team? I would say that's probably on hold for now, right? And I should say this, Alex Singleton was on the show on Monday, Justin. I don't know if you saw it or not, but what an engaging personality this guy is. And we asked him about going to camp with the Eagles, and he's like, well, they're telling me to stay ready. But he almost acted, Darren, like he didn't believe this was going to happen. Did you get that sense?
I got the same kind of sense from him. But, I mean, he's wonderfully optimistic about it, which is good.
Well, of course, yeah. Anything on the NFL, Justin, on whether you think they'll play or not?
Guys, from what I've heard from people down there is that, the NFL and Roger Goodell is saying that we're full speed ahead, but there's still some uncertainty there whether or not they're going to start the season on time. And you guys have seen it, the hot spots in some of those states, in California and Florida. And obviously there's teams all across the United States, but how are you going to be traveling people in and out of those hotspot states to go to some of the other ones? And just the mess that COVID-19 is down in the U.S. So from what I've heard, that you could actually take, the first 4 weeks of the season and sort of flip it and put it on the back end, that if you needed to start a little later, you could do that. The NFL is in a completely different stratosphere, obviously, with the money that they have to try to get through in some of that testing. And I think they want to be full speed ahead, but there are still guys down there that I talk to that are uncertain about when they're going to get rolling.
Awesome insight, Justin. I really appreciate you finding the time. 3downnation.com is where you can find all the latest. The number one source for CFL information is 3Down. Thank you, sir. Stay safe. There you go.
You bet, guys. Be well.
Repping the brand. All right, Justin Duncan, Southern Ontario.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.